Canada's Agri-Food advantages. So first of all, I would like to introduce Susan Harper, Consul General of Canada here in Miami, and a board member of the World Trade Center Miami. And I would also like to take this opportunity and time to thank Susan and the government of Canada for sponsoring our first virtual show. As you know, we have about 10 Canadian companies exhibiting in our exhibits portion of the virtual show. Also in this session, we have Serge, CEO of the Agri-Food Innovation Council, and Jordan Gaw, Regional Director for Investor Services for Invest in Canada. So right now, Susan, I'm going to hand it off to you, and let's get the show started.
Well, thank you very much, Ivan. It's really a pleasure for all of us. This is the first time doing the virtual show, but of course, Canadian participants have been a key component of all of the America's Food and Beverages show. So we're glad to be participating both in the show and in the conference session. And I'm going to cover 3 topics before I hand this off to Serge and Jordan, who are specialists in different areas. But I wanted to put a little context for the activity that we have today and the presentation. And where better to start than a slide from the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Next slide, please. Because people are usually aware that Canada provides a lot of international tourists to Florida, and that's very true. As you can see from the column here, visitors, we are by far the greatest supplier of international tourists to Florida. And I would like to point out, this is actually a slide that we get from the Florida Chamber of Commerce, but of course, they don't usually put the squares in red the way I have here. People often don't understand that even though the tourism takes place in Florida, as you're selling a service to a foreigner, that contributes to service exports from Florida. So it's not totally a surprise that service exports to Canada are quite high, although it certainly is not only a question of tourism. And you'll also see that Florida origin exports of goods, Canada is the number 2 purchaser as well. And under imports, number 3, all of this outlines that we are indeed a key trading partner in the top 3 traditionally for Florida. And I like to also point out over here on the far right of the screen that we are the number 2 investor. The last count we had, there were approximately 500 Canadian companies here in Florida with 2,600 locations. So we have a pretty important commercial economic investment and partnership with Florida. And so even though we are in difficult times now with COVID, it's important to understand that we are a major partner and we continue to be. So I would like to also point out, you may notice here, I think if people can see the screen, I'm wearing a poppy. You may not be able to see that, but I'm wearing a poppy because here in Florida, it's important for me to also point out that it's not just a question of our commercial relationship. We also are very good partners in defense as well. And we have almost 10% of the Canadian Armed Forces in the United States are here in Florida. So we are an important partner for Florida, and Florida is an important partner for us. Next slide, please. One of the key evidences of this partnership as well is the recent USMCA, as it's called here in the United States, or CUSMA, as it's called in Canada. It's an ASEUM in French in Canada. And what this is the new NAFTA, which is very important to us because our supply chains are very important to us. And given the agricultural relationship, whenever I describe this relationship, I like to show this hamburger, because you can show supply chains in all sorts of areas, and agricultural is certainly a key element of that. So when we think about the USMCA, for us, it's a way of underlining how important these supply chains are. Now, we're all aware that during the COVID situation, it's having an effect on tourism and on supply chains. But one of the key elements that both national governments have agreed on is, number one, we want to certainly protect our the health of our citizens and residents, but at the same time, we want to ensure that our supply chains continue to make their contribution to the economic prosperity, because that's essential. And so although the border is closed to non-essential travel, the essential elements of supply chains, of the economic relationship, continue to be supported. So let's go specifically to the agricultural sector, because that's really why you are here today. And I think Ivan thought there were 10. I think they're up to 14 in the end of Canadian companies exhibiting virtually. And we're hoping that they're going to be able to have some very interesting B2B meetings. And so I would encourage them and the buyers that we hope are watching this presentation to please come on to the GRIP station and set up B2B meetings, because that's really what this show is about. And when I have spoken to the exhibitors in the show every year, they have underlined that one of the key reasons that they are here in the America's Food and Beverage show in Miami is because it is really a great place for three different markets. Now, the first market is the obvious one. Here's some statistics on the Canada-US agricultural relationship, and the relationship is a huge one. If we start just by talking about the overall trade, it's 1.4 million US dollars in goods and services traded every minute, which means over the 2 weeks of this conference, it'll be $28 billion US of trade between the two, which of course translates into millions of jobs. The relationship Florida-Canada, the relationship in agriculture is a total of $44.5 billion last year. And specifically Florida-Canada, it reached 1.5 billion in 2019, with Canada being by far the top destination for Florida agricultural exports. We import about 18% of Florida's agricultural exports, and we are the top market for items like orange juice, fresh fruits, strawberries, and watermelons, just to mention a few. And during COVID, when people are cooking more at home, Canadians have voted for Florida produce. And in the first 9 months of 2020, we imported 55% more of Florida's strawberries and 62% more of Florida's watermelons. And Canada did well too. We were able to export 83% more of our Canadian crabs to Florida and 111% more of our frozen potatoes. So I think it's important to recognize that this is an important relationship, that we are very glad to be such a key partners and allies and friends for Florida. And specifically in agriculture and agri-food, we are important partners. I would, however, also like to mention what all of us who are based in Miami, or those of us who are lucky enough to have visited Miami over the years, are quite aware. You don't just come to Miami for the South Florida, the South US markets. You also come for Latin America and the Caribbean. I know many times the exhibitors have said they've particularly been here for the Caribbean market, and it's certainly clear with the huge Haitian and Jamaican and other Caribbean communities here in Miami. We're in the Caribbean, and so it's not surprising that we have a lot of Caribbean buyers traditionally who participate in the America's Food and Beverage. And it's also quite true that we have a lot of Latin American interest. Again, when you're in Miami, hablamos mucho español, and we know that it's a great place to connect to all sorts of Latin American constituencies and traditionally buyers at the America's Food and Beverage Show. So for all these reasons, we think that this is a good show for us, and this is a great opportunity to come to Miami and connect to these three markets. Now, my colleagues from Canada, Serge and Jordan Ga, are going to speak about some other aspects of the relationship. So with that introduction, may I first introduce Serge Bouy, who is the Agri-Food Innovation Council of Canada's CEO. He's led this organization in the development of national strategies on agri-food and research and innovation. And I know that one of the reasons that Commissioner Freed, Florida Commissioner of Agriculture Freed, invited me to be a member of the Agricultural Innovation Work Group is because Canada is known for innovation. And Serge is a seasoned specialist who's worked in this area for a number of years, having worked previously in the legislative branch of our government. And so I'm going to turn this over now to you, Serge, please.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's great to have you as our Consul General in Florida. We are in good hands there for Canada. I want to say a few words before we start the presentation, and I understand that someone is going to put the presentation for me online, but we certainly have, as you outlined, a great relationship with Florida. We would like them to export their weather a little bit more, especially to Ottawa, as we reached about 7 degrees Fahrenheit here over the weekend, and it's just the beginning here. We are indeed a strong partner of the US, and this is why most Canadians tonight are going to be glued to their TV and looking at the little event that may be affecting some people in the US, which is called an election. Everybody is going to be glued to our TV watching with interest the results and thinking of our American friends south of the border. We do indeed partner strongly with the U.S. on different things in Florida, and the Consul General provided some information on the trade on agri-food. Part of the things that we partner on as well is innovation, research and innovation in agricultural and agri-food products. And whether or not it's some of our companies that partner with American companies, it's our universities or NGOs that partner with their counterparts in the US. I know that there is a lot of work being done in various sides of the border, and it makes me always pleased to see the level of collaboration that we have with our neighbors south of the border and in Florida especially. I think my presentation is being put online, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Yes, there we go. So we'll go through the presentation a little bit. I'll give you on the next slide some general information about the Agri-Food Innovation Council. If we can move to the next slide. Can I move them myself? Probably, yes. Our organization has existed for about 100 years. I have not been the CEO for 100 years, but it sounds like it on occasion. We do function as a unifying voice for cross-sectorial research, and we have indeed different types of organizations that are members from of AIC, from universities to companies, from research centers to government organizations such as the National Research Council. So we therefore bring the full voice of the spectrum of research communities around the table to talk about policies. And as indicated in the next point, our members do undertake research, develop new innovation and products for use across the agri-food sector, both here in Canada and internationally. And I want to go in this a little bit more And in the next slide, we'll provide you a little bit more information about the actors, and the actors as different different components of the agri-food innovation sector, from governments to academia, the private sector, extension providers, farmers, consumers, and international partners. International partners, I mentioned, generally they can be states, actually, and we've seen that before. They can be NGOs, universities, private companies, and multinationals that are established in Canada and play quite a role as well. Each actor plays a specific role, and clearly, when there is increased collaboration, it strengthens the capacity of all the actors. If we go to the next slide, we'll move and we'll talk a little bit about academia, which is really responsible for frontline research, either in basic or applied research. And there's been a lot of discussions in Canada on basic versus applied research, and we've seen governments change a little bit their positions on those. But there is a balance between basic and applied research. And when you look at some of the key innovations, and I'll talk about one very soon, you'll see that applied research, basic research, has often yielded results as well. We certainly, through academia, coordinate and execute research and development at all stages, whether by themselves or in collaboration with various other players. And we are indeed blessed with world-class agri-food academics, both in the traditional universities setting, but also in the private sector. And I've got to say, we have academics coming from all over the world in various institutions, and we've been really lucky with attracting the best and brightest to our country on this. And we do export some of our best and brightest as well, but hopefully we'd rather have them in Canada on this to serve the rest of the world. So if we move to the next slide, we'll talk about government, and the government does set the various priorities for agri-food research. It does provide a general baseline on how it's planning to move ahead. It is definitely responsible for various granting mechanisms, from the granting councils to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and to Industry Canada, which has been very involved right now. And it's been interesting for me to even see government organization funding international companies or even foreign companies in research, as long as there was a Canadian benefit to it. And that's one message that needs to be heard as well on that. The government does take leadership in some areas, such as operating various research stations, and also partner with academia to develop agri-food innovation. And we give you one here as an example. Next slide, please. The NGOs are involved as well, non-governmental organization. They usually advocate for research that would benefit their members in specific sectors, but they're also on occasion funding research directly through checkoffs that are applied throughout the sector, as I think is the case in Florida and the citrus area and others. Many such groups are present and vocal in the Canadian agri-food environment, including the Canadian Meat Council, the Canada Council of Canada, and the Grain Farmers of Ontario. Next, please. The business clearly take a frontline approach as well. They provide leadership role in agri-food research and innovation, mainly the second stage, which is really the product development and the commercialization. They also play the role of funders and performers of agri-food R&D, but as I indicated, they're more geared towards applied research and commercialization. On that, if we can move to the next one, please. And this is to give you a sense of the continuum for agri-food research and innovation in Canada. And it goes from the performers and where they where they usually play in, such as Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, sorry for the acronyms, that plays initially a main role in basic research and applied research, but for some of their offices play a role even in development and in field application. So it gives you a sense of who plays a role where. And I think the intent of this presentation is to enable people to think about where they want to play a role and who do they want to contact if they want to partner with research institutions in Canada and do some work there. If you can move to the next one, please. I think I would be wrong not to provide one of our best known agricultural innovation. It was developed by Canadian agricultural scientists almost 50 years ago, and that's canola. And it has grown to be one of the world's most important oilseed crop. If we can move to the next slide, please. And as you can see, the US is one of our large markets for canola, and the total export value right now was in 2019 was 3.5 billion. And it is expected to reach about 112.8 million in the South American market. But not only as the final product of the canola itself, it's we know that it is being right now grown in various fields in Argentina, in Brazil, clearly in the States as well. So we do know that the technology and the innovation has also been exported. And I think this is important for people to know that a lot of the innovations that I'm talking about or the people that are involved in end up being used by others in different parts of the world. And this is what the intent of my presentation is, to signal to people that there is a huge and important brain trust in north of a little bit north of Florida that potentially could help people in those things. Next slide, please. Pulses, same thing. It's definitely one of the key aspects that is developed right now, and some people think it may replace meat. I still like my steak, but real steak. But definitely there is a lot more protein that's being used to replace meat from animals, and the market is growing from 1.7 to 4.2 billion in 2020. That's just flour sales. But there are lots of new markets as well that are being developed, and this is a key innovation that is being supported by the government within one of the 5 superclusters of innovation that the government is pushing for. Next, please. Greenhouse horticulture. We are not blessed, as I may have alluded to, with a climate like Florida. And while Jordan, the person who will speak beside after me, shows nice little tulips, it will soon be replaced by white and ice. And same thing for me. It already had white and ice. So we have to do other things. And in a lot of the world, greenhouse horticulture is being used even in great climates. Greenhouse horticulture has been seen as a way to intensify production and control consistency as well. And our vegetable exports from greenhouses accounts for more than 40% of all fresh products exported. So clearly something that we as Canada are looking at, but other countries as well. Next, please. And basically, it does have the technology to help various human labor shortages. And the reason for this is we are increasingly looking at robotics and artificial intelligence for the technology that is being used in greenhouse horticulture. Next, please. Exporters of innovation beyond foods, as an example, Canadian-made technology and innovations that are making their way to international market. And I want to give an example. Dot technology, originally from Jordan's now home province, Saskatchewan. It has recently been acquired by a company from the US, but it is leading in autonomous farming equipment. It is definitely exporting products all over the world and technology all over the world, and that's the key things that we can do in Canada is the tech exports. Next, please. Again, another example from Saskatchewan. This is very Saskatchewan-centric. I'm going to have to talk to my staff. They wanted to please Jordan, probably. It's based, the Global Institute for Food Security is based in Saskatchewan and works with partners to develop and deliver innovative solutions for production of globally sustained food. And I've given here an example from Bangladesh, and the reason I wanted to give an example from Bangladesh, knowing fully well that not too many of you probably are from Bangladesh, and this is an America's food show. The Canadian Agri-Food, our organization, and organizations such as Global Institute for Food Security have worked and partnered in countries where agriculture is an important issue, but it needs some development and support. And I was pleased to hear Susan talk about the work done by Canadians in Haiti and other Caribbean countries. Our organization has worked in the Caribbean in the past to help some governments put in new technologies. We're certainly happy to see some of that and continuing on that. Next slide, please. Nutrition. I talked about universities being involved. The Beverage Research and Development Center and the University of Saskatchewan, Alberta, have talked about ruminant nutrition and basically to look at the environmental sustainability of beef. And in that, they've got huge collaboration with US companies, and basically it is to lower the methane gas emissions of cattle farming. Next, please. University of Guelph, it's a global known center for agri-food research and innovation, and basically they are working amongst many other things on new technologies to decrease food spoilage, and it basically is enabling products to stay fresh longer and decreasing global food waste, which is a major issue in the world that needs to be addressed. Next, please. Again, lots of other work from the University of Guelph, and I think the presentations are available, so I'll move on to the next slide, please. You know what, we have COVID, and it's been with us since March, and it's put the world more or less at a standstill. I was on the plane when the world started shutting down, the airlines, and it is having an impact on research and innovation in the agri-food sector. So we are looking at new technologies to adapt, and I know one of the key things that has been affecting both sides of the border in Canada and the US, as an example, is meat packing plants and cases of COVID in the meat packing plants. So how do we deal with this, and what are our priorities in research and innovation to deal with this in order to limit potential disease outbreaks in there? Is it robotization? Is it artificial intelligence? Lots of work is done. We did quite a bit of work on this in the last few months in collaboration with government agencies, and we you know, the intention was to develop a common theme. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Definitely some of the priorities have been identified by and experienced by our international partners. The development and adoption of digital technologies, revisiting our research and development priorities to focus on resilient crop development, food waste, biosecurity protocols, and smarter packaging. I remember at the beginning of this crisis going to the store and finding my bananas wrapped in plastic because people were afraid that people could cough on a banana and suddenly infect the banana with COVID. Things need to be done properly, otherwise we'll find tons of plastic on everything, and that's not sustainable as well. If we can move to the next one, please. Public trust. I do want to mention this because this is an issue that I think that we have to all work together on. It's nice to talk about new technology, but we are seeing an increased level of lack of trust by people in technology and research, and everything from vaccinations to a whole bunch of scientific information. And if we talk about agri-food research and innovation, we need to be able to talk about public trust. And as an international community, we do need to increase transparency, and we need to look at fraud as well, fraud detection method. But one key message for me in this case is only by working together, regardless of where we are, that's the only way that we'll be able to restore public trust. Next, please. And working with the Canadian community, my presentation has been a bit less on, trying to sell you something from Canada than to talk to you about what we do and how you can partner with us. And that's one of the things that I wanted to finish more or less with is we are more or less the voice of the sector in the agri-food research and innovation. And if you're interested in hearing more, we do have a fantastic network of industry leaders and quite a bit of information on Canadian agri-food investment climate and general climate as well in research and innovation. If we go to the next slide, please. And we do have a web series actually coming up on investment climate in agri-food. And I think that's my last slide, if I'm not mistaken. If you go to the next one, please, Andy. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Serge. JP, I tossed over control.
I did want to pick up on your last point there, Serge, that this is good background. Some of the examples you used could be quite relevant to, for example, the important cattle production sector here in Florida. That's an important agricultural sector here, but there are many areas where I think we could make a contribution through our innovation. And again, we'd be very glad to help connect people if they're looking for specific contacts in some of these areas where Canada is very much researching and applying the innovation. So now I'm going to transfer over to Jordan Ga, who is from Invest in Canada and who's going to give us an overview of Canada's agribusiness advantages. As Serge has already mentioned, Jordan is actually coming to us today from Saskatchewan, which is a province right in the middle of our country, and which is also preparing for winter. He's the regional director for the Prairies, the Midwest of Canada, and he's the regional director for the Prairies at Invest in Canada, acting as the agribusiness lead. His extensive experience working with private and public sectors in advancing trade and investment opportunities, both nationally and internationally. So, Jordan, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you kindly for that introduction, Susan, and Serge, for the numerous references to the region. I think I owe you $10, and I'll make sure it's a US $10 bill. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. When it comes to business, we know that companies today have many choices on where to expand their operations. Whether it's processing, manufacturing, maybe establishing a R&D center or a center of excellence when it comes to innovation, or maybe just a beachhead to explore new markets. So the question is, why Canada? So we look to provide a little bit of framework around that question, especially with the lens of companies maybe in the food ingredients or finished food product space with this presentation. Now, there's three main things that we find that companies that have actually come to Canada and set up operations have told us that have really been deciding markers for why they made that investment decision. So leadership of companies, time and time again, have told us Canada has clear advantages when it comes to market access, access to top flight talent, and being able to operate in a low cost, business friendly jurisdiction. So those are some of the key themes that we're going to highlight with this presentation. So first of all, just to explain what Invest in Canada is, our organization is part of the federal government of Canada, and we're the Global Investment Attraction Promotion Agency. What we really act is a congregator to bring together industry, community, and government partners to help you, if you're a business, to seamlessly grow your operations into Canada, or maybe you already have operations in Canada. We will help you in a streamlined fashion be able to expand those operations as well. So we have a headquarters located in Ottawa, Ontario, where Serge is, but certainly we have representation across the country. So our mandate as a government organization is fairly simple. It's to promote, facilitate, and accelerate investment into Canada. And how we do this is we work hand in hand with other elements of the government of Canada, but also our partners, whether they be at the provincial or territorial government level, or at the city level, where we have a number of different economic development agencies and other stakeholders too. So here's some of the things that we can do as an organization to help you. If you are a company or an entrepreneur looking at Canada, we help on investment support. So one of the things that we can do here is we can give current and accurate business intelligence and information for making an investment decision. Of course, formerly we were helping coordinate site visits, but we can do this in a virtual fashion now. We can make introductions to who you need to know in the community, whether they be at the government level, academia, or maybe in innovation. Maybe there's a startup with a new proven technology that you would like to learn about as well. And then finally, we can provide you with a roadmap. What are the steps to success to your operation in Canada? So we do all of these things. Often we found that businesses have gone to outside help, maybe a consultancy to scope out opportunities or really learn how to do business in Canada. One of the reasons why we've been established is to do just that for you as our client or customer, the company. And we do this without charge. So just to give you a quick overview, I know Serge touched on this as well, but just the COVID-19 landscape and how it's affecting Canada from a foreign direct investment lens. We want you to know that right from the get-go, the government of Canada was swift to act. One of the reasons they put measures in place was so that we could have a stable, resilient, and sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. So some of the key programs that were put in place to help companies both at the smaller local level and even the global multinational level are outlined on the left side of the screen. Something that I just want to highlight that gives us reasons for optimism is one that we just recently got back, new GDP information, and now we have 4 straight months where the economy as a whole for Canada has continued to rise, so certainly is trending in the right direction, but also the historical context of how Canada has fared in past downturns. So you see it illustrated on the right side of this screen. You know, these are noteworthy financial crises or downturns in the past. And each time the government of Canada at the time has acted in a manner to support the economy. And you've seen after the crisis, the foreign direct investment in Canada has actually been higher than it was pre-crisis. So companies have had trust and confidence in doing business in Canada. So the first thing I mentioned, the companies are really outlining to us as a reason that they choose to do business in Canada is because of our market access. So whether you as a company are looking to just maybe access a new or explore a new market such as Canada, or looking at the North American context for doing business, or internationally, Canada is an excellent place to establish operations to do any one of those things. The reason for this is because of really the unequal free trade agreement access that has been put in place. For instance, Canada is the only G7 country to have a free trade agreement with all the other members of the G7. But in addition to this, we're not limited to just the G7. If you are using Canada as a base for your operations, through free trade agreements that have been put in place, there are 51 other countries that you have access to, opening up 1.5 billion consumers. So that's something that certainly we'd like to give attention to, that many don't realize is present in Canada. Something else that we're told time and time again is how important talent is. In fact, many companies are telling us that the most important commodity today in the world we're living in is having talent and having access to that talent. So whether it's talent from our institutions present in Canada or talent from abroad, you have access to both of them when you're doing business in Canada. And one of the unique things that we've done in the country, really to keep the doors open and not be looking just on an insular basis, is establishing a global talent stream. So one program specifically that stands out is the Global Skills Strategy. And this program is so amazing because in as little as, close to 2 weeks, you're able to bring in global talent to your operation. And you can see on the right side that the history and the effectiveness of this program. And the reason why I said close to 2 weeks is because even during the pandemic, these 2-week processing times have stayed relatively true. And then finally, of those 3 things that I mentioned that executives have been telling us that really are key advantages for Canada is the business-friendly, low-cost jurisdiction that is Canada to be having operations in. So a little known fact is that Canada is the lowest among the G7 countries for its marginal effective tax rate. And you see it illustrated in this slide. Something else just to highlight is the fact that Canada is even 5 points below that of the US. And in addition to this tax friendliness, there are a number of programs and incentives to bring down the cost of business even further. And especially if you were making a food ingredient or doing manufacturing and processing of a food to make a finished food or beverage product too. So what else does Canada offer? Well, Serge did an excellent job of diving into one of our super clusters. A few years ago, Canada, the government of Canada, placing such a high importance on innovation, dedicated just under $1 billion of funding to 5 super clusters in the country. Now, one of these that's of interest for this show and for this presentation, of course, is the protein supercluster, also entitled Protein Industries Canada. And what it effectively is looking to do is really look at opportunities to produce more, especially get more out of the crops that are being grown right in a sustainable way, in a plentiful way in our backyard in Canada. So we have quite a diverse range of crops that are being grown in Canada. And the plant protein attributes are being made use of. And what Protein Industries Canada can do for you as a company in a seamless way, they can help build consortia and partners around putting a project together. So whether it's a large company with maybe a smaller startup and academia as well, they can be very useful and be a congregator for those projects. So they've had already $153 million of public money that has essentially been spoken for, that's been matched by private dollars, so over $300 million in projects, with a couple of them with relevance to this show just outlined on the right side. So you can see we are quite intent on doing plant-based protein manufacturing close to source of where the crops are being grown. We have a number of other things that we can offer companies that are involved, for instance, in food ingredients. As I mentioned before, we have a huge diversity of crops that are being grown in Canada. We are a low-cost jurisdiction for actually doing manufacturing and processing of those crops. And we've had international companies come to Canada and say, we want to process close to where that crop is being harvested. And I'll highlight Roquette there with the biggest pea protein processing facility in the world under development now to open up and start processing at the end of this calendar year. Initially, they did a $400 million investment. Since then, it has grown by 50% So this would be over a $600 million investment that has happened. But what about for finished food products? So certainly the food and beverage sector is of great importance in Canada as well, not just for what it contributes to the economy, but also for the employment of many Canadians. And for all the reasons I mentioned so far, many substantial multinational companies have taken a look at Canada and have decided to set up shop. Many have been there for a number of years, some more recently, and some of those more recent announcements are just mentioned on the right side of this slide, whether it's Mondelez International or Grupo Bimbo. Both of these have set up operations in recent years in Canada and have had success and made further investments as well. So really, whether it's because of market access, talent, or being a low-cost environment to do business from, Canada is an important destination of choice for investment, especially in the food and beverage and food ingredients sector. And just to close, along with my colleagues that have given presentations here, we are happy to assist you in having a further look at Canada as a place to do business from. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jordan. And just as we wrap up for this morning of Focus on Canada, I hope that you will take away a few key points. First of all, we have 14 exhibitors at this show, and they are looking for good B2B meetings through the process that you, I hope, as buyers have, and perhaps other exhibitors have registered in, and we are here to support those companies who are actively looking to renew, maintain, and grow their international business. And number two, obviously the Canada-US relationship is hugely important, and we have a sizable Florida footprint as a result. So your friend, your partner, your ally, your neighbor, Canada is very interested in doing business with you. And as you will have heard from our colleagues who work for the Foreign Agricultural Service and Enterprise Florida International, whichever way you're looking to do trade or investment, we work with partners who can help you find the right people to help support you as you expand your international business. Yes, we're very interested in the South Florida and the Florida market, but recognizing the importance of Miami as a gateway, we'd like to emphasize again, it's the US South Florida market, the Caribbean market, and the Latin American market. And whether it's exporting, importing, investments, or innovation, Canada can be an excellent partner for you in the agriculture and agri-food sector. Thank you, merci, et gracias.
Susan, thank you very much. And thank you for all our panelists for all the time. I just want to see if there's any questions out there in the audience for anybody. Let's see if anything comes up. All right, so we don't have any, but Susan, thank you for correcting me about the 14 exhibitors. You know, after I said 10, someone threw a big paper ball at me. So they were like, no, it's not, it's 14. And I want to thank everyone for their support, especially the government of Canada and for always being there for us. So thank you so much. Stay safe. And this will be played again on our website in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.